The phone rang just as Ethan Walker was chopping onions for dinner. He almost ignored it, thinking it was another spam call, but something in his chest felt tight. When he answered, a nurse calmly told him that his wife, Claire, had collapsed at work and was being rushed to the hospital. Ethan dropped the knife and ran out without turning off the stove. At the hospital, bright lights burned his eyes as doctors moved quickly around Claire's bed. Her face was pale, her lips dry, and machines beeped in slow rhythm. A doctor explained she had extreme exhaustion and a heart condition that had gone unnoticed. She would live, but she needed months of rest and care. Ethan held her hand, trying not to cry as fear pressed heavy on his chest. Not long after, Margaret arrived. Claire's mother walked in with strong steps, her coat still wet from rain. Her eyes were sharp, but filled with worry. She hugged Ethan briefly, then went straight to Claire's bedside, brushing her hair gently like she had when Claire was a child. "I'm staying," Margaret said firmly. "You both need help." At first, Ethan felt relieved. He was tired, scared, and confused. Margaret handled the doctors, the medicine schedules, and the paperwork with ease. She spoke with confidence and control. It felt good to have someone who knew what to do. When Claire was allowed to return home, Margaret came with them. "That's only temporary," she said, "until Claire gets better." The first few days were helpful. She cooked warm meals, cleaned the house, and made sure Claire took every pill on time. Ethan was grateful. He hadn't realized how much work sickness brought, but slowly, things began to change. Margaret didn't ask what Ethan wanted for dinner. She decided. She moved furniture for better space. She changed the grocery list. She organized the closets. "This house needs proper care," she said calmly. Ethan told himself it was fine. Claire needed peace. This was her mother. But the home that once felt like a shared life now felt like a place run by rules. Margaret woke Ethan early every morning. "Claire needs quiet. No noise after 10, she said. She told him what bills should be paid first. She corrected how he folded laundry. She even suggested what clothes he should wear to work. "Looks more professional," she explained. Ethan smiled politely, but inside he felt smaller each day. Claire was weak and tired. She slept often. When she was awake, she looked distant, lost in pain and recovery. Their talks were short. "How are you feeling?" Ethan asked. "Just tired," she whispered. Margaret was always there, adjusting pillows, handing water, speaking softly. Ethan felt pushed to the side in his own marriage. One night, after Claire had fallen asleep, Ethan walked into the living room and saw Margaret sitting alone on the couch. The TV was off. The room was quiet except for the rain tapping against the windows. She was crying. Real tears rolled down her cheeks. Ethan froze. "Margaret," he said gently. She wiped her face quickly, but didn't hide the sadness. "I'm sorry," she whispered. "I didn't mean for you to see." "It's okay," Ethan said. "What's wrong?" She took a deep breath. "I gave my whole life to my family," she said softly. "I stayed in a marriage where I wasn't loved. I raised Claire alone emotionally. And now seeing her like this, it breaks me. I feel so alone." Ethan sat across from her. "I'm scared too," he admitted. "I don't know how to fix this. I feel like I'm losing her little by little." Their eyes met. For the first time since the accident, Ethan felt understood. From that night on, they talked more. Every evening after Claire slept, they sat in the living room with tea. Margaret shared stories about her youth, dreams she gave up, love she never received. Ethan talked about work stress, his fears, and how lonely the house felt. They laughed, quietly at small memories. The sadness felt lighter when shared. Margaret listened closely to everything he said. "You're a good man, Ethan," she told him once. "Claire's lucky." No one had said that to him in a long time. Days passed. Faster. Margaret always noticed when Ethan looked tired. "You work too hard," she said, placing a cup of coffee in his hands. She asked about his childhood, his dreams, his worries. She made him feel seen. Meanwhile, Claire grew quieter. Recovery was slow. She slept most of the day, tired and distant. The emotional gap between husband and wife widened. One night, Ethan fell asleep on the couch from exhaustion. He woke up feeling something warm placed over him, a blanket. He opened his eyes. Margaret stood there. "I didn't want you to catch a cold," she whispered. Her hand rested lightly on his shoulder. It stayed there. The room was silent. Their eyes met again. Neither of them spoke. The moment felt heavy, filled with feelings neither wanted to admit. Margaret slowly pulled her hand away. "Good night," she said softly. Ethan couldn't sleep after that. His heart raced. He knew. Something had changed. From then on, small moments grew stronger. Their conversations lasted longer. Their laughter became softer and more personal. Their eyes held contact just a little too long. Margaret brushed past him in the hallway more often. Once their fingers touched while reaching for a cup. Both froze. Both pulled back. "I'm sorry," Margaret whispered. "It's okay," Ethan said quickly, though his heart was pounding. They tried to act normal, but the tension stayed. Comfort was slowly turning into something dangerous. One afternoon, while Claire slept upstairs, Ethan and Margaret cleaned the kitchen together. Music played quietly on the radio. Margaret smiled. "You know," she said, "life doesn't always give us what we deserve. Sometimes it just gives us what we need to survive." "What?" Ethan looked at her. "What do you mean?" She hesitated. "Sometimes people come into our lives at the right time," she said softly. The words hung in the air. Ethan didn't respond, but he understood. That night, lying in bed beside Claire, listening to her soft breathing, Ethan stared at the ceiling, confused and guilty. He loved his wife, but loneliness had opened a door he never expected. Downstairs, Margaret sat alone, holding her tea with shaking hands, her heart racing just like his. Neither of them crossed the line yet, but both knew the edge was near. The house was no longer just a place of healing. It had become a place of hidden feelings. And while Claire rested peacefully, trusting the two people she loved most, a quiet storm was building between them, storm that would soon change everything. The days after that silent moment on the couch felt heavy. Ethan and Margaret tried to act normal, but every look carried emotion. Every small touch sent a shock through their hearts. They avoided being alone, yet somehow always ended up together. Claire stayed weak. She slept long hours and spoke little. Her world had become medicine times and quiet rest. Ethan sat beside her when he could, holding her hand. But his mind often drifted downstairs where Margaret moved through the house like a strong presence. One morning, Margaret brought Ethan coffee before work. "You barely slept again," she said gently. He sighed. "I worry all the time." She nodded. "You carry too much alone." Those words stayed with him all day. When he returned home, the house was quiet. Claire was resting. Margaret was in the kitchen, sunlight falling across her face. "I made your favorite soup," she said. Ethan smiled. "Thank you." They ate together, talking softly. The space between them felt smaller. "I don't remember the last time someone took care of me," Ethan admitted. Margaret looked at him warmly. "You deserve care too?" Something in her voice made his chest tighten. From that day on, their closeness grew faster. They sat side by side instead of across from each other. They shared small jokes. They talked about life late into the night. Comfort turned into attachment. Attachment turned into longing. Ethan fought it at first. He reminded himself of Claire, of their wedding day, of the promises he made. But loneliness kept whispering louder. Margaret filled every empty space. She listened, she supported. She noticed everything. One afternoon, rain poured hard outside. The sky darkened early and thunder rolled. The power suddenly went out, leaving the house in silence. Margaret lit candles around the living room. The soft light made the room warm and quiet. Claire was asleep upstairs, unaware. Margaret sat on the couch and hugged herself. "I hate storms," she said softly. "They remind me of the night my husband left." Ethan sat beside her. "I didn't know. I felt unwanted," she whispered. "Like I wasn't enough." Ethan looked at her, feeling her pain. "I know that feeling," he said. "I feel invisible sometimes." She turned toward him slowly. Their faces were close. "You're not invisible to me," she said. Their hands touched. Neither pulled away. The world outside faded into rain and thunder. Ethan's heart pounded. "This is wrong," he whispered. "I know," Margaret said softly. "But it feels like comfort." Silence filled the space between them. Then Margaret leaned her head against his shoulder. Ethan closed his eyes. In that moment of weakness, they crossed the line they had been avoiding. Not with passion or excitement, but with sadness and need for warmth. Afterward, guilt hit them both like cold water. Margaret stood up quickly. "We shouldn't have," she whispered. Ethan nodded, unable to speak. For the next days, they avoided each other's eyes. Meals were quiet. The house felt tense. Ethan barely slept. Margaret stayed busy cleaning. Both carried shame. But what happened couldn't be erased. They tried to return to normal, but nothing felt normal anymore. Every glance reminded them of their mistake. 1 week later, something unexpected happened. Claire's doctor called earlier than planned. Her recovery was better than expected. She could come home sooner from a short checkup visit. Ethan was in the kitchen when he heard the front door open. He thought it was Margaret, but it was Claire. She stood there holding her walker, smiling weakly. "I wanted to surprise you," she said softly. Ethan froze. "Claire, you should be resting. Feeling stronger," she said. "I missed home." Before he could respond, she heard voices from the kitchen. Margaret's soft laughter, Ethan's low voice. Claire slowly walked closer. The laughter stopped. She turned the corner and saw them standing close, hands almost touching again. The room went silent. "Mom," Claire whispered. Margaret's face went pale. Ethan stepped back. "Claire." It's not what it looks like, but Claire had already seen everything in their eyes. The guilt, the closeness, the truth. Tears filled her face. "I trusted you both," she said quietly. "You were all I had." Margaret tried to speak. "Sweetheart, I don't," Claire whispered. Her voice shook. "Well, I was fighting to get better. You were hurting me." The pain in her eyes broke Ethan's heart. "I'm sorry," he cried. "I was weak." Claire nodded slowly. "I believed love would protect us," she said. "I was wrong." She turned and walked slowly back toward her room. Each step felt heavy. Neither Ethan nor Margaret followed. That night, the house felt colder than ever. Ethan packed a bag. Margaret sat at the table crying. "I ruined my daughter's life," she whispered. "We both did," Ethan said softly. He walked to Claire's door. "Claire," he said through tears, "I'm so sorry." There was silence. Then her quiet voice. "Leave," she said, not angry, just broken. "I can't look at you right now." Ethan closed his eyes and nodded. "I understand." Left the house with his heart in pieces. Margaret moved out the next day. She couldn't face Claire. "I never meant for this to happen," she cried. Claire didn't answer. Days turned into weeks. The house became silent again. But this time it wasn't peaceful, it was empty. Claire focused on healing, not just her body, but her heart. She went to therapy, she leaned on friends, she slowly found strength again. Ethan tried calling, texting, writing letters. Claire didn't respond. Some wounds needed time. Margaret sent messages too. None were answered. Months passed. Claire walked without help. She returned to work. She smiled again. Not the same smile, but stronger. One evening, she stood in the living room where everything changed. She whispered to herself, "I deserved better." And she believed it. Ethan, living alone in a small apartment, replayed his mistakes every day. The comfort he chose in weakness had cost him the woman he loved. Margaret moved to another city, carrying guilt that never faded. 3 lives changed forever because of one moment of weakness. And the lesson stayed clear. Loneliness can push people into terrible choices, but betrayal always leaves scars. Mistakes don't need anger, they punish on their own. And love, once broken, is never the same again.